I was born in Canada and I moved to Las Vegas, Nevada when I was 3 years old. And I just was curious to sort of just find my story, right? And just kind of see, could Ancestry.com find my, ancestors? Cut to the beginning of 2022, I started to watch a show called Finding Your Roots on PBS. And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can go back to my DNA result. It was a total shock. I was sitting there going like, okay, well, I'm convinced now that this man wasn't my father. And I was on a mission to just find who is. Back in 2017, my girlfriend, now my wife, we just kind of got curious and we had created Ancestry.com family trees.
Yeah.
And her family's huge. And so it was very easy to find, that her family and stuff like that. I had a hard time just because I was born in Canada and I moved to Las Vegas, Nevada when I was 3 years old. So I didn't have any siblings at the time. I didn't have any cousins or anything like that. And I just was curious to sort of just find my story, right? And just kind of see, could Ancestry.com find my, ancestors? And so they had a DNA test. So I was like, all right, let's take a DNA test. This could be kind of cool. And so we took the DNA test. We both did. And I got my results back and I just kind of didn't really understand what to make of it. Now, here's the thing. So I wasn't looking for my father. This wasn't the motivation for me to do the DNA test. I was more or less just curious of to find the history of where I came from, type of thing. I grew up without my father, but the man I thought was my father, I just thought was my father. And so coming back to the DNA tests, I was just more or less like, oh, okay, like this person says that they're my second cousin. And I'm like, okay, I don't really know what that means. But I reached out to this woman on Facebook and she looked like me. It's like we had the same complexion. She had freckles, I had freckles. So I was always going like in my life going like, where the heck did these freckles come from? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And I knew I was biracial, so it was so I reached out to her and I was like, hi, Ancestry.com says we're second cousins. And she's like, oh, very nice to meet you. And I said, I'm from Canada. Are you from Canada? She goes, no. And I go, okay. And I said, my father's side, which I thought was my father, is from Jamaica. Do you have family in Jamaica? And she goes, nope. And I go, well, I guess I don't really understand how this all works. And I kind of just let it go to the wayside and, just kind of went on my merry way. Cut to the beginning of 2022, I started to watch a show called Finding Your Roots on PBS. And it's Dr. Henry Louis Gates, a very well-known professor. And basically the show's premises, they find family histories of like celebrities or something like that, right? And I found it very interesting. And a lot of it was, historic records, but it was also DNA. And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can go back to my DNA results. And it's been 5 years. So let me kind of just see, has anything changed or could I learn some more? And this time I had a lot more DNA matches than just the second cousin. And so it really just took me on a journey of going like, okay, I'm going to find the people that I'm related to. And over weeks, really, I started to just slowly come to the connection or the observation that maybe my father's not my father, because none of these people that say that share DNA with me or have anything to do with that man's family, right? And I had found people on my mother's side. I had actually found her father, her long lost father. She never knew through the DNA. And so I was like, okay, I kind of really know how this works now, right? I found my mom's long lost father. And so I don't know, just like, I was really just going down a rabbit hole of like research every single night and researching this family that I knew nothing about. And so finally I just got to the conclusion that I don't think my dad's my dad. And now I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to find my dad.
That's incredible, Ryan. So growing up, did you ever have like an inkling that your father that you grew up with wasn't your father?
I haven't seen that man since I was very, very little. I mean, I moved from Canada when I was 3. And so, I mean, he's very dark skinned. I remember that, from Jamaica, right? And so, even the DNA results, they kind of tell you your breakdown of your ethnicities, right? And so, I kind of grew up going like, well, my mother's Caucasian. She's Eastern European. My father's Jamaican. I'm 50% white, 50% black. And that just wasn't the case. It was like, oh, you're like 24% black. right? And so I was sitting there going like, okay, well, how does that even work? But I didn't grow up thinking that he wasn't my father. I just kind of grew up without a father, so I didn't really think about it all that much until I had my own children, right? And then I was kind of like more curious, but no, I had no idea. It was a total shock. I was sitting there going like, okay, well, I'm convinced now that this man wasn't my father. And I was on a mission to just find who is.
Wow, that's incredible. The fact that you came back 5 years later,
Yeah.
and then you done some more delving.
What I didn't realize is, almost weekly, because, the more and more people that take these DNA tests, the more and more matches that come back to people, right? And so, I have thousands of fourth and fifth and sixth cousins, but I mean, you could be standing next to your sixth cousin, probably never even know, right? So it's just so far down the lineage. But I mean, I started to find my great uncle, and then a first cousin, and then a second cousin. And so I'm going like, okay, well, a great uncle means that, his are my great grandparents.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there going like, these people are, they're not from Jamaica. And I'm just sitting there going like, I don't think I'm Jamaican. That was almost the bigger shock, was sitting there going like, I grew up my whole life going like, I'm half Jamaican, and I'm not, and I wasn't.
Wow.
Kind of was doing more and more research. And that second cousin that I first connected with, she's very into the DNA stuff. And so we connected, and her family tree on Ancestry, 10, 12,000 people, right? And so very detailed. And so we would connect back and forth, and I sit there and go, she's like, Ryan, I've been trying to figure out how we could be related for the past 5 years, and nothing makes sense. And I said, yeah, I'm coming to that conclusion too. And I said, I think I'm just going to have an awkward conversation with my mother. And she's like, okay, well, let me know what happens with that conversation. She didn't want to make any assumptions. She didn't want to, put anything in my mind that just might not be true for whatever reasons. And so, after I had enough sort of like intuition and enough research, really, I eventually contacted my mom, and I was just like, listen, no judgment. It doesn't matter to me. I just need to know if there's any inkling that man's not my father and somebody else, another man may be. Is that even a possibility? She knew I knew my way around the DNA now. You know what I mean? Like I had really
no going back, Ryan.
Yeah, I'd really educated myself, and she was like, is that what the DNA is telling you? And I go, yeah, pretty much. And she said, okay, yeah, it's a possibility.
Yeah.
And so with that information, she didn't really have any other information to really give me. It wasn't like she said, and his name is this, and you know what I mean? Like she was just like, there's definitely a possibility that it's another man, but it's, I'm almost 44 years old. Like it's 40 something years ago. So I went back to the second cousin and I said, well, turns out my mom said that there's possible it's another man. And she goes, okay, well, since you're telling me that, she kind of gave me a wider picture of her family tree of the people that are still living. And she goes, Ryan, just from how you look in your photos, she sent me a screenshot. She goes, you might want to contact this man. And it said Skyler Jett. And I go, okay. I was sitting there going like, that's a cool name, like super cool. And I was like, but either way, it's like, I still had to put this man in Canada at the time of my conception. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
100%.
He's not Canadian, he's American. And I said, okay, well, and I said, and she's like, well, he's a musician and he's, a pretty well-known musician. And I go, oh, okay, well, I guess I could put him in Canada. I don't know if he was a touring musician or something along those lines. And so I was like, well, if he's a musician, I should be able to Google him, And so when I Googled him and the first like just, collage of photos came up, I go, oh,
wow, that's me.
It's like, I was like, photos from the 90s, photos from the 80s, photos from the 2000s. And I go,
yeah.
Oh yeah, that's me. That's me as a teenager. Like I go, if this guy's not my father, I'll just quit looking, because it was almost eerie of how much we looked alike, because the man that I thought was my father, I've only seen a few photos of him and we don't look anything alike. I always had more features from my mother. And so then I was like, okay, well, now what do I do? Because he's clearly a very highly accomplished, musician and producer and singer. And I was like, I don't even know what to do. How do I contact him? What do I say? I didn't, even when she told me, I was just sitting there going like, it was like almost like, I don't know, the guy's probably in Oklahoma somewhere, just hanging out. You know what I mean? I wouldn't like, oh, no, your father's Skyler Jett. And it made me really nervous to reach out to him because I was,
definitely.
yeah, it actually took me a week to draft it up and to write the message. And finally I was just like, I told my wife, I said, I didn't grow up with a father. And so I probably would have been a lot more devastated if it was like, that man and my mother were still together to this day. And I lived with this man for all my life and stuff like that, but I barely knew him, And so I'm sitting there going like, so at this point, I can't lose a father. All I could do is gain a father. So it could only result in a positive. And that's how I just put it out in the universe when I wrote him. And he responded like in 6 hours or something like that. I didn't realize that he was in the UK and, I'm in Texas. And I think it was both it's probably really a shock for the both of us,
Let's give a huge welcome to humanitarian, singer-songwriter, the founder of Music for Global Change, Skyler Jett, to the Rebecca and Abby Show. Can you recall being in Canada many years ago?
Oh yeah, because the band I was playing in was called Uncle West, right?
Yeah.
And we was playing in this high price kind of hotel. It's for a 5-star, right? And I'm the only Black guy in the hotel.
Yeah.
I'm 21 years old and I'm staying in these rooms in this hotel. And then I come downstairs, people are like, how'd that kid get in here? And what's he doing with tennis shoes on and all that kind of stuff like that, right? But I played there 6 nights a week, right?
Yeah.
Only day I had off a Sunday. So I had to have met his mother in one of those 6 nights a week for 6 months, right? At some point, I met her. We were probably drinking. We're 21 years old. Nobody know, obviously,
the 70s.
You know what I mean? And I'm still waiting to talk to her, because if she can tell me she was at that club, that's going to tell me everything. But since then, Skyler's done a DNA with Ryan and it came back half brother. So there you go.
That's incredible. What was your reaction?
Well, I was blown away. I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Hey, wait a minute, hold on. So I say, where you from? He said, from Toronto. I said, well, I ain't never been there. You know what I mean? And I didn't know that there are provinces like states, right?
Yeah.
So you got Ontario, where Toronto's from. The next province over is Manitoba, and that's where I was. So he asked his mom. He said, "Did you ever used to go over to Manitoba, to Winnipeg?" She said, "All the time." And I'm going, "Oh boy, oh boy," because the trippy thing is. Ryan has talked to a few of my cousins.
Yeah.
And I talked to him too. And there's only one of them. Now, you have California, then you have Oregon, then Washington State, then you're into Canada.
Yeah.
That's Vancouver, Canada. And so that's the first place you go. So I asked a couple of my cousins, like, have you ever been to Winnipeg, which is in the middle of the country? They said no. I said, okay, that eliminates that. Right? So it's like, it can only be me because I'm the only one been in the middle of the country for 6 months in Canada.
Right.
But
that was the thing, right? That was the thing. It was like, regardless of if when I reached out to him, again, he had to be placed in that place at the same time and stuff like that. If he would have told me, no, I was in Brazil, all through 1977 or whatever, then I'd be like, well, thanks for your time. And I would have moved on, because scientifically, if it wasn't Skyler Jett, scientifically it had to have been one of his male cousins on that same line of the family tree, right? And then I found out he had like, gosh, Dad, how many do you have? Like 8 or 9 male cousins, So I was like, but again, the second cousin was like, Ryan, I know all these cousins. She was like, just from the way you look,
Skyler.
So and it was as we're getting closer to the 6 weeks, and Ryan started calling me dad.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, I don't care what they say, I know you my dad. He knew it, right?
Yeah.
And it was when he called me dad, that was like the most beautiful thing to me.
Oh.
Because my dad left my mom when I was 6 months old.
Mm.
So I didn't have a father neither, right? And I know what that felt like, to not call somebody dad. And when he called me dad, and I'm going, I'm just hoping this is going to be true, right? With the DNA. And finally, Skyler did the DNA with him, and it came back. They was half brothers, which could only mean I'm his dad. And I was like, I was relieved. Now, I thought about this. Think about all your life, and you've never been able to call somebody dad. I've been there. So we've both been there together. You know what I mean? And we're gonna make up all the time for that, and go on with our life and make it beautiful from here.
That's so amazing. And I said it's just like you hear these stories like in the movies. How does ancestry.com, how does it actually work?
Yeah, I mean, you typically hear the stories of like, I was adopted, I'm looking for my parents or something like that. Like I said, with me, it was just more curiosity.
Yeah.
And so you order a test from ancestry.com. I believe it's like $99. It's just a little capsule. You put saliva into it. It's a saliva test, and you just register the kit and you mail it back to them. And within 4 to 6 weeks, you get the results. And then on the website, you get all of these like with the breakdown of your ethnicity. Even now they have like the breakdown of your ethnicities by parents. And so with me being biracial, you know what I mean? It was really interesting to see like, okay, I have 50% of DNA from my father and 50% from my mother, and my mother's Caucasian, and it's like, French and Eastern European, and, and then on my dad's side, it's like English, but it's also, 6 different African countries. And, I'm really a big history buff. So it was all super interesting to me. But one of the bigger things is, it shows matches with people who you share DNA with. And so what happens is, I won't get too technical, but the percentage of DNA or the amount of DNA that you share with another individual, that essentially sets your relationship with them, right? So clearly, the more DNA, it's your parent or your child or your sibling, and then it goes down and down the list, right? And so, the majority of people of how DNA works, like I said, 1% of DNA you'll share, and they'll be like your 5th cousin or something. But again, when somebody's your 5th cousin, that means you share a great grandparent, right? And so now you're going back hundreds and hundreds of years, and unless everybody has immaculate family records, you probably never know these people, right? As more people would come along, I'd be looking up going, oh wow, this is a 1st cousin, and then that means that we share a grandparent or something like that. It's a formula basically.
Yeah.
For me, the sort of research that I did was, this wasn't just me reaching out to Skyler Jett because my mom said, hey, I hooked up with a man, and this is his name. It was like, it had nothing to do with hearsay or what I was told. It was all dealing with science and the fact that I'm related to all of these people in his family. So when I spoke to him, I was like, okay, well, do you know this person? And he's like, oh yeah, that's my uncle. And I go, do you know this person? He's like, that's my cousin. And I go, right. So we're related.
Wow.
Somehow, right? And so then it was just a matter of like, taking a finalized DNA test to go, yes, you are my father, not like you're my uncle or something like that. I highly suggest everybody take a DNA test. For me, it was just a total shock because one, I was thankful that he was still alive.
Almost died from a heart attack on December 17th. Hey, what if he'd contacted me after that, or tried to contact me after that, right? So I believe God's kept me here for not only for my mission, but to meet my new son.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, he told me. I was like, he's like, so even from that point, I was sitting there going like, you know what? It's never too late to to form a relationship. I was sitting there like going like, yes, I'm a grown man, and I told him, I said, listen. When we spoke, I go, it's not me trying to get an invitation to Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? I said, I'm just looking for a conversation. And if it turns into a relationship, great. And it's been, we talk every, he, like I said, I live in the US and he lives in the UK, but we talk every day. We obviously have technology and we Skype and we, Facebook message and stuff like that. And it's been amazing.
Ryan, what's next for you and Skyler? Because I know you're already working on so many amazing projects. One of them is Music for Global Change.
Yeah. So, I mean, I obviously started to do more research on my dad and just, see all of his amazing accomplishments. And I knew that he had a movement called, Music for Global Change, and all about, social conscious music. And I was like, wow, that's very, he's a humanitarian. I was like, that's very noble. You know what I mean? Like, I could have found my dad and he was just some jerk somewhere, you know what I mean? And so it was like very refreshing
Yeah.
to find someone who's trying to essentially change the world with music. And just because of like, his artistic background, and I come from an artistic background. Unfortunately, he didn't pass on the singing DNA gene to me, but I grew up, an artist, and I own a digital marketing company. I do website design and photography and things like that. And it was just kind of this thing where he's like, I'd like to, revamp our website and just, we have a YouTube channel and stuff like that. And I was like, these are all things in my wheelhouse. Like, this is sort of like a serendipitous thing where it's like, we can help each other while growing this, father-son relationship as well. And so it turned into father-son and, almost like this, I won't say working relationship, but because it's more than that, but it's been great. And so he invited me to be on his weekly show as a co-host, and I'm getting to meet all of these, again, amazing, accomplished artists, and it's all people that he knows. And it's just like, and to hear his stories, he'll tell me about Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles.
Oh my God. And I mean, he's so great. I mean, he's like got a huge heart, and I love him on the show.
You're all about pushing socially conscious music to the forefront, which is, I think, is very much needed now more than ever.
Music for Global Change is a brainchild that I had about changing the way that we do music.
Yeah.
I'm an activist too, right? And I want to take racism out of music. I want to take age discrimination out of music. I want to take image out of music. They have nothing to do with the sound of music, right? I want the young people to know what it feels like to be around a human being that's that kind of talented, not somebody that's push button music, right? That's so cool. That's a culture in there. So, but I'm never going to give up on the sound of, you can't beat the sound of a human being, because a human being has emotion. And that's what music is, emotion, right? How does it feel? I want to take that on the road. I want to build record labels like this and radio shows like this and festivals. So with those three, I can get my media out, right? And then maybe get people to start writing more social conscious music. And we just, put talent out everywhere. Just, feed talent all over the world doing this kind of music. And I mean in all kind of languages too, right? Because it's music for global change. I go to different countries and meet people and try to find different instruments that you've never seen before. And make collaborations with musicians from all sides of the world to write with each other, right? So I think it's going to turn out pretty cool.
100%. It's only going to go up, Skyler. Especially the fact that more people are aware, more people are becoming more conscious.
Yeah, people are tired of bad news.
Yeah, that's it.
So Music for Global Change is going to give them some competition. It's going to be about good news, right?
That's
There's a lot of beautiful things happening, all the time, and they never get celebrated. Yeah. And that's what I do. So I bring those kind of people on the show. Every invite has been from me, and so what I do is ask musicians, have you ever written any social conscious music before, right? And I know it's going to be just a small percentage of all the stuff they've written before, right? But bring those on, and we keep adding those up, right? We keep adding those up until we got a full show, a 2-hour show of just incredible talent, right? And then start making that go viral.
I think for me, I told my kids are, in their teens and early 20s, and I was just like, hey, I got a story for you. Like, your grandfather's a different man, and my daughter's almost 21. She looks up and she's like, Dad, he worked with Whitney Houston, he worked with Celine Dion. And I go, that's before your time, although. She goes, everybody knows Whitney Houston and Celine Dion. I go, fair enough. But so he's met my kids, and they love him. They think it's super cool that their grandpa is Skyler Jett. And I think the next thing for us is just getting to meet in person. I've never been to Europe. I've never been to the UK. And after 44 years, I'd love for us to to meet in person and just, just get to start now.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
The importance of never giving up, always having hope.
And what I love even more so is like, he sent me the message and I was just walking around the room going, this is insane, right? And so I sent it to my oldest daughter, right? And she read it, and I didn't know how she was going to digest it. But at the same time, man, she got in touch with Ryan, and then they had an hour conversation.
Yeah.
Then she passes him on to my other daughter, my middle daughter, right? And they have a long conversation.
Yeah.
And she passes them off to Skyler, and they have a long conversation, and they're all in love with each other.
Yeah.
And they're happy. They're like, we got a big brother.
Yeah. That's the thing, is like when he told me that he, I assumed he had children already, but when he told me, and then they reached out, and their reaction was like, welcome to the family. That really touched me as well, because I didn't know what to expect. And then to turn out that, we're all siblings, and I'm actually the oldest, I'm the firstborn.
Yeah.
And they were still like, this is crazy. We have a big brother that we never knew about, what I mean? And so that aspect of it was like, well, so many things could have went bad with the situation, you know what I mean? And everything was just like, I was just blown away at every turn, you know what I mean? Just like, I'm like, wow, I've got all these siblings. I want to meet these siblings and my dad. And, it's been wild, and I think one of the most touching things is like, when I sent the message and he read it and we responded through Facebook Messenger, but after about 20 minutes of going back and forth, and again, this is like 2 a.m. my time. I'm like out of bed going like, he responded, and waking up my wife and he goes, can you Skype? And I go, yeah. When he asked me, can I Skype? I knew that he wanted to see he was curious to see, I got to see what this guy looks like. He'd probably gone on my Facebook page and goes, okay, there's probably something here,
Yeah.
And it was just from there. And then we talked for hours and it was great, and he even told me, like you were saying, he said, Ryan, no matter what happens, like if it turns out that you are my son, I'd be proud to call you my son. You know what I mean? And it was, I was really fighting back the tears there, just because it was not what I was expecting. I didn't even know if he would ever see the message or even respond. I was kind of just like, well, if I don't send it, I'll never know.
So I tell my wife, this young man, he believes that I'm his father, right? She said, let me see the picture, right? And she gets the picture, she go, gonna be hard to get it out of that one. And so she's all happy, and I'm like, well, okay, that's a relief. And then to have my kids to have that reaction, I'm over the moon for it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's all wonderful. And like I said, we go on from here. It's such a beautiful feeling that this has happened.
Yeah.
Here we are, but I mean, like, it's what we're going to do from here together, right?
Amazing. I love it. I'm excited for you, Ryan and Skyler. Seriously, it's just such a beautiful relationship, and it's amazing to see how you've just connected so strongly. Like those 44 years didn't pass.
Yeah,
that's such a beautiful relationship, and you both have such a beautiful heart. So it's just a blessing that you have one another. What are the odds of Skyler being your father, Ryan? And what are the odds of Ryan being your son, Skyler? It's just, it's meant to be. So I'm not gonna go into tears again. I'm excited for you both and for what is yet to come, and the amazing things that you're doing for music for global change, and the fact that you're bringing great news to the forefront. And I think it's absolutely incredible. And I thank you both.
I love you, sister.
Thank you so much.
Namaste, namaste, namaste.
Namaste.
Thanks for having us, okay?
You're most welcome, Skyler.